WordPress people. Welcome back to the WPMRR WordPress podcast. I'm Joe.
And I'm Aragorn.
And you're listening to the WordPress Business Podcast. We've got the savior of Middle-earth here on the podcast with us. What's up? What's going on this week, Aragorn?
Oh, not too much. Just been busy guiding some hobbits around and helping them avoid all the big bad monsters out there in Middle-earth.
Very, very diligent of you. We appreciate everything you do to save Middle-earth and all that. Cool. Aragorn on the podcast this week, also known as Shane Bishop. Shane, have we met before? I don't know if we've met at a WordCamp before or if we've just kind of been digital friends. Maybe the latter. I don't know. Yeah,
mostly the latter. I haven't yet made it to a WordCamp, so that's okay. On my to-do list, for sure.
Gotcha. Yeah, maybe in the future we'll get to hang out in real life. I know we've emailed back and forth, and I'm a big fan of the plugin that you've built, and also interested in some of the new stuff you have coming out too. So yeah, know who you are, the plugins you're up to. Why don't you give people kind of a little background there?
All right, so I'm the developer and founder for the EWWW Image Optimizer. Started it about it's 2019, 8 years ago, somewhere in there. Yeah, I think this is 7. Anyway, was looking at a few client sites and wanting to optimize their images, and I had seen the classic Amazon study back in the day where they talked about how every 100 milliseconds would lose them billions of dollars and all that crazy. So like, well, yeah, I got to have these guys optimized. So I went looking for image optimization plugins, and there wasn't much out there. Smush back then relied on the Yahoo Smush API, which was, I think, in the process of being deprecated, or at least maybe it was run by a hamster. I'm not sure.
Gotcha.
It was pretty frail and often overloaded, and not anything like the Smush plugin we know today. And so I started a new one, the EWWW Image Optimizer, that can compress images without sending them to a third-party API, so that you didn't have to depend on anyone else's servers to compress your images.
Interesting. So it's like 7 or 8 years. That time frame is cool. I remember when I first came into the WordPress space and I first started learning about performance and optimization, like image optimization stuff. Okay, I got to have my images loading fast. Like, I'm on your plugin page right now, and I can remember the like kind of cover photo artwork as one of the first plugins that I saw. Like, and it's one of those ones that stuck in my head. So for people who don't know, it's a race car kind of cartoon on the background, and for me, that's something I see, and it totally like brings back memories of kind of starting off like learning about this stuff. Yeah, a lot of great ratings on the plugin. It's like 4.5 stars, almost 300, almost at 300 5-star ratings, and yeah, I mean, you're like kind of closing in on 1 million downloads, or excuse me, 1 million active installations. Yeah, there you go. So is that kind of the next, are you kind of looking at that as a milestone?
Oh, I try not to pay too much attention to that because it makes me nervous. Like, man, being responsible for software that's running on 700,000 sites. Wow. It's kind of humbling, just to think that many people have trusted their image optimization to the software that I built while I was on paternity leave 7 years ago, So yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Wow, cool. So is EWWW something you started while, or you kind of, maybe it was one of those things that kind of started off, maybe not as a business, but just as like a plugin you saw a need for and you just built, and you built it while you were on parental leave, is that right?
Yeah, originally it was just, I had started a little bit of a consulting business, was trying to get some local clients and stuff, doing just running websites for them, basically building websites. And the company name, and the one I still use for business purposes, is exactly WWW. And so the EWW is just an abbreviation for that, and also a little bit of a joke, like your images are really gross and bloated, so you need to optimize them. But yeah, so I was on paternity leave for about 4 weeks, and I was like, hey, I got some time. Not getting much sleep, but I got time.
Yeah.
So I took one of the existing plugins out there that was the CW image optimizer, and so it was originally just a fork of that. That one was built so that you had to have root access on the server, and for anyone that knows what that actually is, almost no one has root access to their server. So it's like, oh, that's a large market. So yeah, I rebuilt it so that it could use binaries built originally on a Bluehost server.
Okay, cool.
They had surprisingly all the tools you needed to build an executable or a binary right on the server already. I was like, wow, that's kind of incredible. Even now looking back, it's like, wow, they had all that on their servers and they let me use it. Crazy.
Yeah. It's cool to hear that this started on parental leave. I think a lot of people think of, okay, I'm taking time off. I'm not going to have much time for anything. But it's actually like super refreshing to hear that something that was started during that time kind of grew and became this something that powers almost 1 million websites, man. I mean, that's pretty cool. And so is EWWW, is this your main thing right now? Is this the kind of only thing you focus on?
Yeah, right now it's the only thing I'm doing. So, 7 years ago, I was working for our local community college, and so I was just working on the plugin part-time, just evening hours, weekends, just as I had time. And then a couple years in, there were enough people that were asking for an API sort of usage, kind of going back to the way Smush originally, well, it still operates, and most of the others operate with sending your images to a third-party server, because not all sites were compatible with the free mode of the plugin. And so I started it out latter part of 2013 and thought, well, I'll start this out, and I had a free HP virtual server for a couple months that I could use, and well, let's see where this goes. And it took off pretty quickly.
Yeah, very cool, man. I'm as someone who runs a business that cares a lot about performance and speed optimization, as our customers do, and expect us to do it for them. I hear a lot of people asking questions like, "What's the fastest theme to use?" Or like, how can I get a good foundation for speed? And a lot of times their answer is just, there are probably good and less good choices for performance in terms of a theme, but a lot of it comes when you build the website, and especially how the website performs over the long term. When you've added a lot of images or video files to it, we see that slowing down websites far more than purely kind of bloated code does. And yeah, I'm in a lot of kind of Facebook groups around WordPress and kind of Slack channels, and every once in a while people are talking about image optimization and performance, and people are kind of posting the plugins that they think are the best. And very, very often I see EWWW come up as like, it seems like almost like a cult following. Like people who use EWWW like really seem to dig it and think it's like it's prime time. I would love to talk a little bit more about like the technical side of image optimization and kind of what makes EWWW unique. I think you kind of mentioned a little bit that the way that the optimization works, but maybe we could touch on that even deeper.
Okay, so the basics of image optimization, or what most people call image optimization, I guess, is simply image compression. We're repacking the bits that make up an image, and we're trying to make it more efficient. And I think you guys had posted the other day on Twitter a link to one of my old articles about, what did I call it? Packing your bags. That's what it was. And using the idea of a suitcase to illustrate image compression. And if you're packing for a trip and you just take a whole drawer and dump it into your suitcase, that's not very efficient. But that's what cameras do. They see and they just dump it into the image. And they don't attempt to make it real small. They use the JPEG format at least, so that's good for at least the start on compression. But they're trying to do things fast, and they're not interested in minimizing the file size necessarily. So on my iPhone 6, which is not very modern, but it's got a 12 megapixel camera, and that's a lot of data that most screens can't display. That same iPhone 6 has a 1 megapixel screen, basically, compared to a 12 megapixel image. So it can only even display a 12th of that image. So compression is then take your suitcase and you go, okay, if I want to be efficient about this, I'm only going to pack the stuff I need, right? And so, if you're going to the beach, you're not going to take hiking boots, and you're probably not going to take a winter parka. So you leave that stuff at home, right? So it's the same idea with image compression. When you got a large swath of sky, you don't need a lot of bits to represent that sky. You can smooth that out a little bit and ditch the quality there somewhat, and without even the user noticing it. And a lot of times I look at the images and I'm like, that's a tenth of the size. I can't even tell the difference. It's incredible. The newer compression that we use on the API, well, I say newer, it's been 4 years now, but it's designed by the folks over at Tinify, TinyPing and TinyJPEG.
Mm-hmm.
And it's incredible software. I mean, the amount of space that they're able to save without you even being able to see the difference, it's kind of mind-blowing. Originally, when I started the plugin, I was like, oh, everything's got to be lossless. We can't be losing any quality,
Mm-hmm.
and I was adamant about that, and people started suggesting, well, why don't you try out JPEG Mini, or why don't you try out TinyPing? And I'm like, well, but it's lossy. It can't possibly be any good. But I tried it out. I was amazed. It really was solid compression. And so that's what we use on our API. I didn't design that part of it because I'm not quite clever enough for that.
Gotcha. So it sounds like you have maybe it's you and maybe a small team of people working on it.
Me and one other guy I just hired about a month ago. So
Gotcha. Nice. So you're starting your foray into you went from company of one to company of two. How's that transition going?
It's going really well. I hired a guy that I knew a little bit. He's living in Missouri right now, and I'm in Montana. So we do everything just like we're doing, online web chat and stuff. And yeah, but it's been working really good. He's really been catching on quick with the image optimization stuff, and yeah, we're getting good feedback from customers and everything on that. So yeah, I'm really happy with that.
Cool. Awesome, man. I'd love to talk a little bit also about pricing for image optimization and how you kind of came to the pricing structure you're at now. I see with a few optimization plugins, it looks like you kind of have a flat rate piece of it and then kind of a per image piece of it. Is that the pricing model you've always had for EWWW, or did it start somewhere else and you kind of had to say, this isn't quite working, let me try adjusting and trying something else?
Yeah, back in the day, it was a lot cheaper for starters because we weren't using quite as sophisticated of compression, and so we have to pay for that, and so some of that's just handing down the cost. But originally it was kind of similar to some of the others where it was more of a use it or lose it style. Like you pay $5-10 a month and you get this many images, and if you pay $20 then you get even more images and it's even a better deal, and that kind of thing. And then when we started off with the TinyPing folks, one of the things that they did that I really liked was they didn't have use it or lose it. It was you pay only for what you use, no more, no less, and that's it. And I really liked that model, and so that's what we switched to back in 2015. And at that point, we still had kind of the idea of, if you compress 1,000 images, you get one price. If you compress 10,000 images, you get a better price. But I had a conversation with a marketing professor. I don't remember where he was a teacher at, but he lit into me about our pricing being too complicated. And at that point, I think we had like 4 different pricing tiers, and I was just like, well, and I could see the pain because I had that same conversation with other people that they were just confused. They didn't get, the math was difficult to work out, and there were just so many questions. And he's like, try out postage stamp price. And I was like, what? And so he explained it, and basically the idea of every image costs the same no matter what, because it costs the same to compress. The 10,000th image didn't cost less to process, so why charge less for it? So that's when we switched to just flat across the board, 0.3 cents per image, and we've been doing that for 2-3 years now, and it's worked out really nice. It's really eliminated a lot of the confusion around pricing. So I think that's been a big win.
Yeah, half the battle around pricing is just getting people to easily understand the pricing. Obviously, there's some science behind, too high pricing or too low pricing. You want to experiment and get a good pricing at a good point, so that's optimal. But a lot of it is also just like having people understand exactly what they're buying and doing that pretty easily. We have kind of these care plans, and we have different levels, and then we have even other separate levels for kind of like custom websites, and it is a little bit confusing. And honestly, I don't even like our pricing table that much like today. So we're always still trying to figure out how to make it simpler. So I totally get that. Can we talk a little more about and this is just honestly for me, because I want to learn a little bit more and don't completely understand what loading on your server versus loading, or I guess like if I were to use something that loads on my server as opposed to you guys using your server to compress the images, what's the difference there? And how can that affect what's happening on your site?
Right. So just to make sure, I think you're talking about like the difference between like on our pricing page, the exact DN or the compression API style.
Yeah.
And so that's the other side of our pricing, where our exact DN system goes one step further, basically, where the API is offloading the compression. So, your server sends the image to our server compresses it, sends it back to your server. ExactDN, instead of sending it back to your server, it's done on demand on our server and delivered via CDN, a content delivery network. So, your images are then served from the location nearest to your visitors for even more of a speed boost. And that side of things, because we're paying basically bandwidth there in addition to the per image type of deal, we just do a flat rate on that. So everyone pays $9 a month unless your site uses ludicrous amounts of bandwidth. Yeah, so we try to keep that simple instead of people being like, oh, I got 20,000 images, how much is that going to cost? And even there with the API, even though it's the same amount per image, it's still, I think, causes some issues for people. So, with ExactDN, whether it's a small site or a pretty good size site, it's $9. And so the technical difference on that, I think I kind of explained it a little bit, but just to go a little bit further, with the API, your images are still then delivered from your server. Or, if you want to use a different CDN like CloudFront or StackPath or, any of those out there, go for it. We've compressed your images locally, and now they're going to be fast no matter how they're delivered. Then on the ExactDN side, all the images on your server stay the same way they are. And all the compression is done on our system. Nothing's ever sent back to your server on that sort of setup. There's some benefits to that, namely the WebP conversion, and that's something I was thinking we get into a little later, and we can go into more detail later if you want. But the WebP format has some pretty impressive gains over the traditional JPEG and PNG or PNG formats. And so with using a CDN, with sending all of your images through our server, essentially, we're able to auto compress or auto convert to WebP and deliver the right image based on the browser support. So, like Safari, if you're familiar with the WebP format, Safari doesn't support that yet. So Apple's kind of dragging their feet and saying, no, we don't want to. But at this point, everyone else has pretty much gotten on board. There's going to be people with older browsers and stuff. I just looked at it this morning, and estimated browser support is at 80% for WebP. So the 80% of people that can use WebP automatically get even smaller, faster images, and they're getting them from a CDN, which is super cool. Whereas if you're doing it locally, you can do server rewriting. It gets complicated with WebP because you have to do it conditionally based on those 20% of people that can't use WebP yet.
Yeah, cool. I'm just Googling this for the first time, WebP. I had not heard of this. So maybe I have to talk to my team a little bit about what WebP can do for us. But yeah, I mean, it's I'm kind of looking at this kind of Google developers page. Looks like WebP lossless images are about 26% smaller in size compared to PNGs. I don't know about that exact number, but it seems like there's a significant saving just in terms of file size when you're using a WebP. And it seems like there's also a little bit of flexibility in terms of if you're delivering to a different browser, you can just kind of like you can have the browser choose like what kind of image it wants to use to load. If it's on Safari, it may not play nicely.
Possibly. I'm trying to think.
Maybe I said that wrong. I'm trying to get my own grips on it.
Right. For the most part, it's basically just going to convert, the image directly over to that format. And I mean, I don't know all the details of how they do it either, but the main thing is that it's smaller in most cases. And it's similar to our normal lossy or premium compression that we have right within the regular plugin, but it's able to pack the data differently somehow and get the file size down even better than the JPEG format can, and the PNG format usually too. Yeah, my brain just stopped.
Happens to me all the time, man. This is a usual occurrence on the podcast. Cool. Let's dive into some of the new stuff you're doing too. So you have EWWW, image compression, kind of at scale for if you run your own website, you can get in on it. If you're kind of an agency or a freelancer, I believe you can use it across multiple sites with a single subscription. Is that right?
Right. Both of our products are designed to be used across multiple sites. The difference being with the compression API, you're just paying per image. So, use it on 1,000 sites and you're still just paying per image. With ExactDN, you pay charge per site that you activate on it, but it's still just one subscription. There's an account page that you go to that you add all your sites that you want to have active on there, and then you get a discounted rate for each additional site that you add onto the account there.
Yeah, cool, man. Okay, so we have EWWW. What's the new thing you're working on?
It's a little bit of a rebranding of our ExactDN system. There's 4 things that Google talks about often with image optimization, and that's why I said earlier, most of us, when we say image optimization, we're talking about image compression. But there's more to it than just image compression for most sites, or at least there's more that they can do. The second biggest one usually is properly scaling your images. And that's where I was talking about the whole, my camera's 12 megapixel, but my screen's only 1 megapixel. It's that kind of idea where you're trying to scale down the dimensions of an image so that you're displaying the correct size for the page and the device size.
Yeah, my developers tell me this all the time. I have, I'll put an image that's too big, or I'll upload an image that's too big for it's something that's taking up 300 megapixels, or 300 pixels wide, and they're like, "Why did you upload a 1,000 thing?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, probably shouldn't do that." So okay.
Right, exactly. So that's kind of the second pillar, if you will, of image optimization is making sure those dimensions are accurate and responsive for the device that your visitor is using. The third one that Google will talk about is what we just mentioned with the WebP format. They'll tell you use next-gen image formats. Of course, they're promoting WebP because that's the one they developed. There's also the JPEG XR format from Microsoft, and I believe Apple has their own HEIF. I don't know how they pronounce that, but I think that's the one that they've been working on, and possibly part of why they've been a little hesitant to jump on the WebP bandwagon. But so there's a few different ones. Really, we do WebP just because it's the most widely supported.
Yeah.
And it seems to be the one that everyone's getting behind pretty well. So that's where we're throwing our hat in. And then the fourth area of image optimization is lazy loading, or as Google will usually tell you if you run your site on their PageSpeed Insights, it'll tell you to defer off-screen images, which is just what it sounds like. Don't load images that aren't on the screen, right? So if you got 50 images on your page and the visitor comes and they can only see 2 of them, well, don't load the other 48 yet. Wait until they scroll to them and then load them in. Of course, there's some extra consideration in there. How soon do you load them in when they get to the viewport, or do you load them when they're within 300 pixels of the viewport, stuff like that. So because you don't necessarily want someone to scroll and miss your image because all they saw was a blank space either. So those are the four main areas. And that's really what ExactDN was built to solve. Well, ExactDN was built to solve the image optimization and image scaling or sizing issues. Along the way, it gained the ability to do the WebP stuff. And then earlier this spring, we introduced a lazy loader, which takes care of the fourth. And it also allowed us to do more with the image scaling issues. And so our new plugin is built to do all four of those things in the smallest package possible and as easily and painlessly as possible. And so we called it the Easy Image Optimizer. And so it takes everything we've learned with developing ExactDN and makes it super simple. You literally buy a subscription, add your site URL to your account, go to the plugin, click activate, and you're done. That's it. There's no more to do. Your site is instantly optimized. So that's, I don't know, it's pretty exciting that we're even able to do something like that, where traditionally, you install the Image Optimizer, you run a bulk optimize, and it might, if you got 10,000 images, it's going to take a day, and you got all that wait time, and it can be kind of a tedious process. And that's only the compression side of things, to even try to address the resizing or the WebP or any of that yet. So
yeah,
so it's
cool.
pretty exciting.
Let me hit you with like an example site. What if I have a site, with like 20,000 images on it? Does the Easy Image Optimizer and kind of all these image optimization plugins, is there kind of a separate piece to going back through all my previous photos and images and optimizing and compressing all those, and then kind of doing the same thing moving forward? So whenever like I upload an image to the media library, it automatically gets optimized and compressed. Are those two different pieces, or does it do both of them? What's up there?
Those are kind of two different pieces, and you can use both styles. So there's the type of image optimization like Easy Image Optimizer, where your images are just going through a CDN, and it's the CDN that optimizes them on the fly as soon as your visitors request them. So as soon as someone visits your page, all those images are sent or loaded through the CDN and automatically optimized. So you don't really have to think about, are these new images, are these old images? They're just images on your site, and we're going to optimize them as soon as the visitor sees them. And then the other style, of course, is on the local server, especially if, with some of the managed hosts like WP Engine, you only got 10 gigs of space, or some of them are even less than that. And so you might be trying to save on storage space. So then it can be important to go through and use something like our compression API or one of the other plugins like Imagify or Short Pixel to go through and make sure all your local images are properly compressed too, because that can be a huge deal. You might have 5 gigs of images and slim it down to 1 or 2 using one of those plugins. So there still is a use case for those alongside of the Easy Image Optimizer, for sure.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Okay. I'm learning a ton right now, so I'm like geeking out over this. If people want to check out EWWW, just the plugin, if you're looking for like premium stuff and you really want all the bells and whistles, it's just EWWW.io. The new Easy Image Optimizer is EWWW.io/easy. So it's all in one place. You can go check it out here. Cool, man. What's next for the EWWW family? Are you guys, I guess, you're kind of closing in on the million active installs. Do you have anything kind of planned for the next year or something like that? Or you just kind of like rolling with what comes?
Right now, we just literally released the Easy Image Optimizer, so it's kind of, see how that goes and see how things roll with that. There's always going to be, compatibility things with different themes and page builders and different things, and so we're always working with different plugin authors and theme authors to try and make sure we're integrating with them properly and giving their users every opportunity to have the fastest site possible. And I guess, some of the things on the radar probably aren't as exciting as as all of that, but the stuff that I've got on the roadmap is more of, kind of cleanup and kind of tools, I guess, to do various things around that idea of cleaning up. One of the things I was going to mention earlier with image conversion, we talked about WebP, but there's also a lot of times people will save their images as in the PNG format because they want it to be lossless, and they don't realize that it's going to be, it could be 10 times too large compared to the JPEG format. So we have some conversion stuff in the EU Image Optimizer that auto converts those, but for all their existing stuff, they might convert them and be a little nervous, and so they don't delete the originals. And so then one of the things I want to do is create a tool that will go back through, after they've checked things out, they've made sure it's all working, then they can go clean up the originals. Or with the WebP stuff, if they've generated all the WebP images on their website and then they decide, I want to use something like EasyIO or ExactDN that generates them all in the CDN, and I don't need all of them locally and I can save storage space that way, how can I clean those up? And we've had people ask about that. It's like, well, you can just go on the command line, right? Everyone loves that. But no, we want to create a tool that will go through and clean up all those WebP images for them when they don't need them anymore. And some different things related to that. So those don't get me super excited like the Easy Image Optimizer, but I think they'll be useful, and they're things that we've definitely seen a need for in the past.
Yeah, very nice, man. Cool. Well, we'll include some links in the show notes when the episode goes live so people can go check out all this, whether people are, again, running their own website or whether they're working on multiple websites, managing multiple websites. All this stuff sounds like a really positive move for people who are interested in focusing on performance, making sure sites are running smoothly. A lot of times that's related to images and how well the images are loading. So cool, man. Let's start wrapping up. Why don't you tell people where they can find you online? Websites, social media, all that jazz.
Sure. So, of course, the website, EWWW.io. On Twitter, it's just EWWW.io. And we also have a Facebook page. I believe that's the same. I was going to try and pull it up real quick here.
EWWW something.
Yes, if you search for EWWW, you're more than likely to get us.
Yeah, you've got good
one other company out there using EWWW, and they don't look anything like us. Yeah, it is EWWW.io on both Twitter and Facebook. So.
Yeah. All right. Cool, man. Last thing I always ask guests to do is to ask our listeners for a little 5-star iTunes review for the show. So if you wouldn't mind giving our audience a little ask, I'd appreciate it.
Hey, yeah, sure. Yeah, make sure to check out this podcast on the iTunes store and give it a review. It's 5 stars for sure. And make sure you subscribe and all that good stuff.
Yeah, right on. And if you happen to leave a review after listening to this episode, make sure you leave Shane's name in the comments on something cool you learned in the episode so we can forward it to him and give him a thanks for the review we got online and all of that. Cool. See, if you're going to leave a review, wpmrr.com/iTunes, forwards right there. Make it nice and easy for you new listeners. If you're new to the show and this is your first episode or your second episode or your third episode, we've got dozens of hours of content. Go back through some old episodes. Don't hesitate to binge on some older content, still just as good, and may help you in another topic that you are stuck on or having challenges with. We've talked about a ton of stuff on the show, so I'm sure there's a few episodes that unstuck. Cool. WPMRR.com, WordPress monthly recurring revenue. If you're interested in selling ongoing support plans, maintenance plans, supporting websites, and using a subscription model, feel free to check out the course. It's WP Buff's open sourced, so don't hesitate to go grab it for yourself. Cool. That is all for this week. We will catch you all again next week. Shane, thanks again for being on, man. It's been real.
Yeah, thank you.